Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach Jon Runs His Cake Hole, brought to you by the Sports Reclamation Project. I'm your friendly neighborhood youth coach, Coach Jon, and thanks for stopping by. It's been a crazy week for me. I am journeying into a new coaching venture, mainly because I want to spend time with my youngest child, my 15-year-old, and I have agreed to coach rec volleyball. Now, I've played volleyball in intramurals and for fun, but however, this is a new journey for me, so I'll be documenting the experience as a first-time coach. Mainly, I'm doing it to spend time with my daughter. She's my baby, and they have a hard time getting coaches, so I'm going to give it a shot and see how it works out. I got a big topic I want to get in today, too. It's probably going to rub some people the wrong way, but if you follow me on social media, you will know I have a passionate stance on this, and it's travel sports. One of the biggest problems I have with travel sports is some of the unscrupulous and shameless behaviors I have seen there. And speaking of shameless, it's time for a few shameless plugs prior to getting started. If you have not found and liked or followed us on Facebook or Instagram, please, pretty please with sugar on top, consider doing so. You can find us on Facebook at The Sports Reclamation Project and on Instagram at _Sports Reclamation Project. If you would like to visit our website, you can find it at www.sportsreclamationproject.com. There you'll find some research and other practice templates that guide you towards being a more transformational coach. If you would like to support and represent the Sports Reclamation Project, feel free to visit our shop at www.sportsreclamationproject.com. Click on that shop link and there's hats, shorts, jackets, you name it, there's merchandise there. I will add that none of the sales profit goes into my pocket or back to the Sports Reclamation Project. It goes to a scholarship fund we have to cover the recreational fees for underprivileged youth athletes. I would also be amiss if I did not mention TrueVictory.com. Founded by U.S. military veterans and first responders, True Victory is a sportswear and streetwear brand. It's dedicated to building everyday champions on and off the field. Use the promo code RECLAMATION for 15% off your purchase. Now, let's get into travel ball. I don't use the word hate because I believe the word hate is very powerful, but I strongly dislike the travel sports culture in the United States. Make no secrets about it, not my bag, not my thing. A lot of problems there, and I'm going to get into them. However, I'm often asked by parents about travel sports, with questions ranging anywhere from, should my athlete try out for the local travel team? Do I know a local travel coach? I have been approached several times about coaching in or helping establishing travel programs, and as requests, I politely decline. I've had experience coaching travel sports, and it's just not for me. While I'll never hold any ill will to parents seeking better opportunities for their athletes, I do hold the entire travel sports complex, or industry as you want to call it now, in contempt due to some of the dishonesty and blatant thievery on display. A lot of them are robbing well-meaning parents of their hard-earned money, basically through lies. I'm sorry, I don't care what you say. You can stick elite on it, and it's not elite. I like that line from Tommy Boy, I could take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, and I'm selling you a guaranteed piece of crap. It's kind of the same thing with elite. Just because you call it elite doesn't mean it's elite. If we're being honest with you, nobody under the age of 16 is elite. Puberty has not been finished. People have not begun growing. Using the term elite is a buzzword. Elite is like the top 0.5% of a sport. LeBron James is elite. Patrick Mahomes is elite. Little Johnny might be cute, might be a sweet kid, but he's not elite. Not at 11. However, I digress. At one point, travel teams, and I say one point back when I was a kid in the 90s, were known as select teams. And what select teams were the best players from a city, county, or region went and tried out and were selected to compete in nationwide or statewide tournaments. There was usually select and elite. Select was the lower half, elite was the higher half. I made select, barely. However, the winner of these statewide tournaments would advance to the national championships, and the national champion, often the AAU national champion, would be crowned. They still have the AAU national championships every year in July. They're down in Disney's Wild World of Sports. They're a big deal. These tournaments were actually the origin of travel sports, though, and featured high school athletes that would often be going to play Division I or major college basketball. AAU leagues were also the post-high school leagues for a lot of players. Hall of Famers such as Connie Hawkins played in the Amateur Athletic Union when he was banned from Iowa. The point was, and is, travel sports were for the best of the best, and making a select team was reserved for the cream of the crop, the top. Now, I'm sure someone reading this or hearing this is asking themselves, Coach Jon, if you're determined to lower the 90 or 70% drop rate in youth sports, why are you dumping on travel ball? It's a fair question. Okay, what if I were to tell you that there's evidence to link travel ball to the youth sports drop rate reaching 70%? Let's discuss some of the overall problems with travel sports. As I mentioned before, if we're all elite, no one's elite. Elite should be reserved for the cream of the crop, the top 0.5%. Cooper Flagg, elite. Think of that. Cam Ward, the number 1 pick in the NFL, elite. However, all you seem to need these days to form a travel team is a coach, and I use that term coach loosely. I've seen some of the behavior and conduct of travel sports coaches, and they're embarrassing. When you, as a referee, have a conversation with a travel coach and his argument is, I know ball, that's, upset parents and a ball. That's pretty much what you need for elite. A lot of times it's a coach who's upset the way another program is being ran, so he or she rounded up a bunch of upset parents and created a team. And then what happens is these athletes, as young as 5 years old, they have 7U national AAU basketball tournaments. I've heard of T-ball national championships. These kids are being taken all over hell and creation to compete in showcases, formerly known as tournaments. You take that, you throw a word elite on top of it, and you're seemingly in business as a travel or competitive team. The problem is with elite and select teams these days is they're a dime a dozen. They're more of a buzzword than the distinguished title. And essentially all travel sports have became is a high-priced recreational league. And while I'm at it, we need to, as parents, stop dumping on rec leagues. Quite frankly, I'll stand by my stance that, again, about 98% of youth athletes and coaches should be in recreational leagues and local city leagues being developed. I believe travel and elite teams are something that parents want their kids on for bragging rights. I've heard parents say, my kids want better competition. No, your kids want to play. Parents say those kids can't catch a ball or hit a ball and they're not starting till 11 in some sports. So what? Kids need developed. One of the biggest differences being in recreational leagues is there's a guaranteed playing time for your athletes. Sometimes not guaranteed in travel sports. I've heard stories of kids being on travel teams an entire year and never being subbed into a game. That's unacceptable. When your parents are paying hard-earned money for you to be part of this organization and traveling several hours, sometimes by car or plane, and you not getting in at all is disgraceful. One of the biggest issues I take with travel sports is there's no development. You know me, development over wins and losses. Development and retention are the goals, winning is the object. I say it all the time. Now, don't get me wrong, there are coaches who are dedicated to developing and establishing the fundamentals and love of sport needed for long-term athletic development in the travel ranks. However, and unfortunately with travel teams, there's often a win-now mentality attached to it. And it's mainly in part to the high cost attached to playing travel sports. You get coaches and parents who are so focused on winning that cheap plastic trophy or those $6 rings that they'll sit players an entire tournament and not play them for a meaningless piece of plastic. You pair that type of approach with the scheduling of tournaments that allow oftentimes for 1 day a week of practice, and then they'll play 4 to 5 games over a weekend, sometimes in sports, multiple games on 1 day. The opportunity for development and skill building are few and far between. That many games, that little practice is like, the best way I heard it described is like a teacher giving a test before teaching the material. You don't develop that way. And because of this, less skilled players are relegated to minimal time on the court, field, pitch, whatever. And it's proven to leading to the loss of love of sport and quitting. Remember, most kids quit youth sports because it's not fun anymore. They're not being developed. Time and cost. Let's talk about time and cost, or the return on investment, which is what parents see this as a lot of times. Last time I checked, in 2023, youth sports is a $37 billion industry. That's billion with a B. I believe it's went up. With Project Play reporting that the average American family, average being in the middle, spends $883 per child per season, excluding travel expenses. Now, considering that travel sports are often year-round and encompass multiple seasons, the cost of travel sports elevates to a point where families have been reported spending $5,000 a year per child per sport. When that type of money is shelled out for a youth athlete annually, there's an external and internal pressure created, and it's often applied to the athlete to provide an immediate return on the investment. And when the pressure for that return on investment becomes too great, the athlete will usually quit, once again, due to lack of fun and enjoyment once had in sports. Let me preface it by saying I don't believe sports parents are bad. I don't believe sports coaches are bad. There are some rotten ones in both groups. I believe they're misled. They're misguided. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses. I once saw a sign that I love. It says, "Stop keeping up with the Joneses are broke." And that's kind of how I feel about this system. This one hits home to me why travel sports should probably go away, at least till 16. Increased risk of overuse injury. When I was in graduate school for the first time, I was fortunate enough to do extensive research on overuse injuries in youth sports pitchers. You can find that research published on my website, shameless plug, and reach the conclusion that specialization, or playing one sport for over 60% or 8 months of the calendar year, can alone contribute to overuse injuries, especially in the bodies of athletes who are still growing and developing. Overuse injuries often are gone untreated as just being sore or pain or, being tired. But they often lead to more serious injuries such as MCL and ACL tears. I've had an MCL tear as an adult. They're not fun. I couldn't imagine that on a growing body. Or, and more serious for baseball, the UCL tear, the ulnar collateral ligament, which leads to the dreaded Tommy John surgery. Do you know at one point, the Tommy John surgery, the average age of getting it was 27 years old. 27 years old. That means roughly 5-6 years in their Major League Baseball career. Now the average age is about 16. Roughly a high school junior. Barely old enough to drive a car, and they're having their elbow and the ligament in their elbow surgically repaired, and sometimes having a cadaverous tendon put in there because they've just been ran down. You also notice that the Tommy John surgeries became a lot more common in young Major League Baseball pitchers. It can't be a coincidence, right? Used to be a very rare surgery. Now it seems like every time you turn around, somebody else is out with a Tommy John surgery. It's something to think about. These overuse injuries are breaking our athletes. It's not just Tommy John surgery, but that's the one that we really look at. There's been reports of a doctor. He used to work for the Chicago White Sox, and I apologize, I'm blanking on his name. Had to do a Tommy John surgery on a 10-year-old boy from baseball. These all start from overuse injuries. And it's also exacerbated by the social pressures inflicted on athletes to play through pain, to win that showcase event and enhance their club's profile at the expense of their health. 2 clips that are iconic. There's probably more if I really think, that make me nauseous as a coach and an adult when used is Kurt Schilling's bloody sock from the 2004, I believe it was ALCS or World Series, and Michael Jordan's flu game. Yes, they were iconic moments from world-class professional athletes in must-win situations. It's not a moment you want to use to push a kid to win a stupid tournament. I'll get off my soapbox on that. Travel sports also provide false hope and expectations. We know 1% of high school athletes will reach Division I sports. 7% will play college sports at any level. That's pretty impressive if you get there. So the chances that your 9-year-old will get the exposure needed to justify the lack of development, absorbing costs, increased risk of injury, and burnout is ludicrous. However, many parents are sold a bill of goods that this travel team, coach, league, or environment is a golden ticket to that college scholarship and pro career. Parents, let me give you a free tip. If a coach says playing with him, working with him, or training him will lead to a Division I scholarship or any scholarship whatsoever, he's lying to you. She's lying to you. There's a lot more that leads to a scholarship, and some of it's just luck. Nobody can guarantee that. However, what happens is when it's not delivered as promised, the parents and athletes often move on to the next team with the next coach who promises the same things. The cycle repeats ad nauseum. The family becomes disgruntled and the athlete quits. I'm not saying these problems don't happen in rec ball as well, but travel ball, they're a lot more significant. If there wasn't, there would not be 16 travel basketball organizations in the area I live in. I get passionate about this. Do I know the answers to how to fix these problems? Absolutely not. However, I do know rec sports are slowly dying off, and most athletes should be playing rec sports with kids in their school, not driving 500 miles to play a team that lives 2 cities over. But they're dying off, and we're in this race to nowhere that's encouraging athletes to specialize and parents to spend a small fortune on travel sports. All you're paying for in travel sports is status and something to tell your friends. I do know one thing, and that's the first step in fixing the problem is admitting there is one. And there is a problem with travel sports and youth sports in this country that I challenge all parents and coaches to take a look at. And maybe consider rebuilding your local recreational communities, keeping teams local, developing players locally, instead of going out, wasting money, burning these kids out, hurting these kids, and getting the same results you get if they played rec ball. And that's about enough of that. As always, I appreciate you popping in to listen. If you have a comment, question, feedback, would like to rebuttal, please email me. If you'd like to come on this show and talk about something there's something you want me to talk about, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on the Sports Reclamation Project Facebook page, on Instagram, or you can email me at john@sportsreclamationproject.com. Other than that, I hate to say that's it, that's all, but I hope you have had a ball. If you are going to your kids' games tonight, please thank their coaches. Be kind to the referees, and as always, tell your kid you love watching them play. This is John with the Sports Reclamation Project, and we will talk again later.